They call it Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the hairy man. A shadow that stalks the wild places, from the swamps of Illinois to the snows of Everest. I've followed the whispers, the tracks, and the screams to uncover the truth. These are no campfire tales. These are real encounters. Join me as we step into the unknown, where something watches from the shadows, waiting for its moment. Encounter 1. The Murfreesboro Monster. My nightmarish encounter with a Bigfoot-like beast. I'll never forget that chilly October night in Murfreesboro, Illinois, when the quiet of this small, sleepy town was shattered by something straight out of a nightmare. I'm Andrew H. Malcolm, a reporter who thought he'd seen it all, until I found myself chasing whispers of a creature that locals swore was real, a hulking, hairy beast they called the Murfreesboro Monster. What I uncovered in this unassuming farming community, nestled along the sluggish Big Muddy River, wasn't just a story. It was a chilling encounter with the unknown that left me questioning everything I thought I knew about the world. It all started a few weeks back, in the summer of 1973, when Murfreesboro's 10,000 residents, folks more accustomed to the rhythm of falling leaves and high school football games than unexplained phenomena, began reporting something bizarre. I'd heard the rumors buzzing through the brick-paved streets. A creature, 8 feet tall, covered in matted fur, smelling like the foulest river slime, was stalking the shadows. At first I chalked it up to small-town gossip, maybe a Halloween prank gone wild. But the more people I talked to, the more I realized this was no joke. The fear in their eyes was real, and it was contagious. My first stop was the police station, where Chief Toby Berger, a no-nonsense man with a weathered face, leaned back in his chair and sighed. "A lot of things in life are unexplained," he told me, his voice heavy with the weight of too many sleepless nights. "This is another one. We don't know what this creature is." Berger showed me a stack of reports, dozens of them, detailing sightings of what locals described as a gorilla-like monster. I tracked down Randy and Judy at a diner on the edge of town where they sat huddled over cups of coffee, still shaken. Judy's hands trembled as she recounted their encounter. They'd been parked by the river one moonless night, the kind of night where the darkness feels alive. "We heard this cry," Judy whispered, her eyes darting to the window as if expecting the creature to appear. "It was like an eagle's shriek, but louder, like it was amplified through the trees." I looked out the window, and there it was, lumbering toward us, 8 feet tall, covered in light-colored fur, matted with mud. Its eyes, they glowed like they were lit from within. "I didn't wait to see what it wanted," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I floored it and got us out of there." The next day, I met Officer Jimmy Nash, who'd become a believer in the Murfreesboro Monster after his own brush with it. He took me to the riverbank, where the creature had left its mark. The ground was still soft from recent floods, and there, in the oozing mud, were footprints, unlike anything I'd ever seen. They were massive, easily twice the size of a man's, with deep impressions that suggested something heavy, something powerful. I stood there, staring at the prints, trying to imagine what could have made them. The town was on edge. Families were canceling Halloween trick-or-treating, and shotguns were being loaded behind locked doors. I needed more answers, so I sought out Lauren Sorkin, a cryptozoologist who'd been studying similar creatures for years. We met at a quiet cafe where he spread out maps and sketches of what he believed was a Sasquatch, a genetic anomaly, he said, related to the Yeti or Bigfoot. He showed me a map of the Shawnee National Forest, 400 miles south of Chicago, where the creature might have taken refuge in a cave. Search parties, complete with trained dogs, had scoured the area, finding only more footprints and an unidentifiable slime. As I stood by the Big Muddy River one evening, the air thick with the scent of damp earth, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. And then, just for a moment, I heard it. A faint, eerie cry, like an eagle's shriek, but deeper, more primal. My heart raced. I scanned the trees, but saw nothing. Maybe it was my imagination, or maybe the Murfreesboro Monster was still out there, watching, waiting. Encounter 2, The Yeti Lives, My Tale from the Snows of Everest, by John Jack Harper, Expedition Chronicler, July 26, 1958. I'm scribbling this by the flicker of a kerosene lamp in a wind-battered tent at 18,000 feet, my fingers half numb from the cold. The Himalayas loom around us, jagged and indifferent, their peaks clawing at a sky so clear it hurts to look at. We've done it, or so we believe. After weeks of toil, doubt, and half-frozen fear, our expedition has uncovered something that'll shake the world. Proof the Yeti, the abominable snowman, is real. It started in Kathmandu, where our ragtag crew assembled under the banner of Tom Slick, the Texas oil man with a wild glint in his eye and a wallet to match. Me, a journalist with too many bar tabs and too few bylines. Dr. Evelyn Morse, a zoologist who could out-argue a mule. Tenzin Sherpa, our guide, whose quiet nods carried the weight of generations, and a dozen porters who sang to keep the mountain spirits at bay. The trek was brutal. Blizzards chewed at our gear, and the thin air made every step a gamble. On the 10th day, near the Menlung Glacier, we found the first sign, footprints, fresh and impossibly large, pressed into a snowfield like a giant signature, 13 inches long, 8 wide, with a strange thumb-like mark where a big toe should be. Yetis, he said finally. They watch us. The tracks led us higher, toward a jagged ridge where the wind howled like a living thing. That night I woke to a sound, a low, guttural whistle that wasn't the wind. My heart pounded as I peered through the tent flap. We followed the tracks to a cave, its mouth half hidden by ice. Tenzin hesitated, clutching his prayer beads, but Slick pushed forward, lantern in hand. Inside, the air was thick with a musky animal smell. On the floor, a nest of matted fur, bones picked clean, and, God help me, a tuft of coarse, reddish-brown hair clinging to a rock. There, on a distant slope, something moved. A shadow against the snow, upright, broad-shouldered, loping with a grace that wasn't human. It paused, turning toward us, and I swear I saw eyes, bright and knowing, before it vanished into the gloom. The hair, the prints, the sighting. They're proof enough for now. Dr. Morse says the hair's unlike any known animal, though she's itching to get it under a microscope. But up here in the snow and silence, I'm certain of one thing. The Yeti's out there, watching, waiting. And we've only scratched the surface of its mystery. Encounter 3. My Hunt for Bigfoot in the Wilds of Big Country. By Ronald W. Erdrich, Abilene Reporter News. The mesquite-scented air clung to my skin as I stood on a lonely stretch of West Texas scrubland, the kind of place where the horizon swallows you whole. I'm Ronald W. Erdrich, a reporter for the Abilene Reporter News, and I've chased plenty of stories across the big country, but none like this. For weeks, whispers of a creature, a towering, shaggy beast folks swore was Bigfoot, had been rippling through the ranch lands. What I found instead was a mystery that's got me looking over my shoulder, even now. It all kicked off in the spring, when ranchers north of Abilene started talking about something strange prowling their land. I first heard it at a diner in Merkel, where weathered men in Stetsons swapped stories over coffee. "It ain't no bear," one said, his voice low. "Too tall, too fast. Smells like death warmed over." They spoke of broken fences, spooked cattle, and tracks, big ones, that didn't belong to any critter they knew. My first stop was the Bar T Ranch, where owner Cal Thornton met me at the gate, his shotgun propped against the porch. He took me to a dry creek bed behind his property, where the earth was soft and scarred with prints. They were massive, 15 inches long, with toes splayed wide, pressed deep like whoever or whatever made them weighed a ton. "Found these after my dogs went berserk one night," Cal said, pointing to a snapped mesquite branch 10 feet off the ground. I snapped photos, my hands unsteady. Over the next few days, I crisscrossed the big country, from Hawley to Hamby, talking to folks who'd had run-ins with what they called the hairy man. There was Maria Delgado, a schoolteacher who'd spotted a hulking figure crossing FM 1082 at dusk, its eyes glinting like reflectors in her headlights. Then there was Jake Riley, a teenager who'd been camping near Lake Fort Phantom when something heavy circled his tent, grunting and snapping branches. I met with Dr. Lena Hargrove, a biologist from Abilene Christian University, at a coffee shop cluttered with her sketches of primate anatomy. "These aren't bear or human," she told me, sliding a plaster mold across the table. He showed me a map dotted with sightings, a cluster forming around the Brazos River and the cedar-choked hills near Buffalo Gap. I joined a group of locals on a nighttime search near the river. Tito led us to a game trail where he'd found tufts of coarse, dark hair snagged on barbed wire. We moved deeper into the brush, the crunch of our boots the only sound. A scream tore through the night. Not a coyote's yip or an owl's hoot, but a guttural, bone-rattling wail that seemed to come from everywhere. My flashlight beam swung wildly, catching nothing but thorns and shadows. We didn't see it that night, but we found more tracks at dawn, fresh, leading toward the river. Lena cast them while I interviewed the group, their voices trembling with a mix of fear and awe. Back in Abilene, I pored over my notes, the photos, the hair sample Lena sent to a lab in Austin. The results were inconclusive. Unidentified mammalian origin, the report said, but that only deepened the mystery. I thought of the scream, the prints, the stories. I thought of Maria's eyes, Jake's shaking hands, Cal's broken branch. Last night I drove out to the Brazos alone, parking near where Maria had her sighting. The stars were out, the river a black ribbon under the sky. I sat on the hood of my truck, listening, waiting. Around midnight I heard it, A rustle, too heavy for a deer, followed by that smell, faint but unmistakable. I aimed my flashlight, my pulse racing, but the beam caught only a flicker of movement, something dark slipping into the trees. Was it Bigfoot? I can't say for sure, but I know what I felt, the prickling sense of being watched, of standing on the edge of something vast and unknown. The big country's keeping its secrets, but I'm not done digging. From Merkel to Buffalo Gap, folks are still seeing the hairy man, still hearing that scream in the night. Whatever it is, prank, myth, or something older than the hills, it's real to them. And after what I've seen, heard, and felt, it's real to me too. Out here, where the land stretches forever, Bigfoot might just be walking among us, a shadow in the scrub, waiting for the world to believe. Encounter 4. My Night with Bigfoot. A Chilling Encounter in the Kentucky Hills. By Wendy Mitchell, Morehead State Public Radio, November 1st, 2015. The Kentucky Hills have a way of keeping secrets, their dense forests and winding hollers swallowing stories whole. I'm Wendy Mitchell, a reporter for Morehead State Public Radio, and I've spent years chasing tales of moonshine runners and forgotten coal towns. But nothing prepared me for the story I stumbled into back in the summer of 1980, when a quiet corner of Rowan County became the stage for something straight out of a nightmare, a creature the locals swore was Bigfoot. 35 years later, I went back to uncover the truth, and what I found still haunts me. It was a crisp October morning when I pulled into Morehead, my recorder stuffed in my bag, and my skepticism dialed high. The talk of Bigfoot had flared up again, sparked by a reunion of sorts. Folks who'd seen something strange in the woods near Triplet Creek all those years ago. I started at the Coffee Tree bookstore, where old-timers sipped black coffee and swapped memories. One name kept coming up. John H. Cox, a farmer with a grizzled beard and a story that made my skin prickle. I found John at his farm, a weathered spread tucked against the Daniel Boone National Forest. He leaned on a fence post, his eyes scanning the tree line as he told me about that night in '80. Me and my wife Evelyn were driving home late, he said, his voice steady but low. It was past midnight, and we took the back road along Triplet Creek. That's when we saw it. I pressed him for details, and he described a figure stepping out of the pines, 7, maybe 8 feet tall, covered in dark, matted fur. Its eyes caught our headlights, glowing red like a deer's, but this wasn't no deer. It moved like a man, but faster, loping across the road in 3 strides. I felt a chill, picturing that lonely stretch of road. John said the creature paused, staring right at them before crashing back into the woods. The smell hit us through the open window, he added, like a wet dog left out in the rain too long, mixed with something sour. Evelyn, sitting nearby, nodded silently, her hands twisting. They'd reported it to the sheriff, but no one took them seriously, except others who'd seen it too. My next stop was the home of Sarah Tackett, a retired school bus driver, who'd had her own run-in that same summer. Sarah welcomed me into her kitchen, where photos of grandkids lined the walls. I was checking my garden at dusk, she said, pointing out the window toward a patch of land sloping down to the creek. Heard branches snapping, thought it was kids messing around. Then I saw it, big, hairy, standing at the edge of the trees. It was watching me. Sarah's voice cracked as she described how she froze, staring into eyes that felt human but wild. She ran inside, locked the door, and didn't sleep for days. I drove out to Triplet Creek myself, parking near the spot John described. The road was narrow, flanked by thick pines that seemed to lean in, blotting out the sky. I walked the bank, my boots sinking into the muddy earth, and found what locals had talked about for years. Faint impressions in the soil, too big for a man, too deep for a bear. I snapped photos, my heart racing, and sent them to Dr. Amos Reed, a wildlife biologist at Morehead State University. Over coffee at the university, he showed me casts he'd made back in '80, footprints 14 inches long, with a strange, almost human shape. No known animal matches this, he said, tapping the plaster. The stride, the depth, it's something heavy, bipedal and strong. Amos had a theory, a relict primate, maybe a descendant of Gigantopithecus, hiding in the vast, untracked corners of the forest. He'd heard the stories, dozens of them, from hunters, hikers, and farmers like John and Sarah. Rowan County's got the perfect cover, he explained. Creeks, caves, and thick woods. If Bigfoot's real, this is where it'd be. I nodded, scribbling notes, but part of me still wondered if it was all folklore spun out of control. That changed the night I joined a group of locals for a search. We gathered at dusk, armed with flashlights and a recorder, led by Tommy Banks, a hunter who tracked everything from deer to bobcats, but swore Bigfoot was different. We hiked along Triplet Creek, the air heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. Tommy pointed out broken branches, too high for a bear, and a tuft of coarse black hair caught in a thorn bush. "Smell it," he said, holding it out. I did, and gagged. It was that same sour, musky stench John had described. We pushed deeper, the forest growing darker, quieter. Then it came, a sound that stopped us cold, a howl, deep and raw, echoing through the trees like a warning. My flashlight trembled as I scanned the shadows, catching nothing but the glint of a raccoon's eyes. Tommy whispered, "That's him." We didn't see it, but we felt it, a presence, heavy and watchful. Later we found fresh tracks near the creek, deeper than the ones I'd seen before, leading into a thicket too dense to follow. Back in Moorhead, I sat in my car outside the radio station, replaying the howl on my recorder. It wasn't a coyote or a fox, it was something else, something that made my stomach twist. I thought of John's glowing eyes, Sarah's wild stare, Amos's casts. I thought of the hair, the tracks, the stories piling up over decades. Last week I went back to Triplet Creek alone, just before dawn. I stood by the water, the world silent except for the gurgle of the creek. Then I heard it, a faint snap, a rustle in the pines. I spun around, my flashlight cutting through the mist, and for a split second I swear I saw something. Tall, dark, slipping into the trees. Was it Bigfoot? I can't prove it. But I can't unsee it either. In Rowan County, the hills are alive with whispers of the creature they call the hairy man. For John, Sarah, Tommy, and now me, it's more than a story. It's a truth that lingers in the shadows, waiting for the next soul, brave enough to venture into the dark. The Kentucky hills are a maze of secrets, and I've walked right into one. I'm not the same reporter who rolled into Moorhead with a smirk and a notepad. The stories, the tracks, that howl, they've burrowed into me. I keep my recorder close now, listening to that sound in the dead of night, wondering if it's out there, watching. Rowan County's Bigfoot isn't just a legend. It's a mystery that's real to those who've seen it, and I'm one of them now. Somewhere in the hollers, the hairy man is still walking, and I'll keep chasing until I find him, or he finds me. The pine barrens of New Jersey stretch out like a green sea, their tangled cedars and sandy trails hiding secrets most folks would rather not know. I'm a reporter for the New York Daily News, used to chasing mob stories and city scandals, but in the summer of 1981, I found myself deep in these haunted woods, tracking something wilder, a creature locals swore was Bigfoot. What I saw, heard, and felt out there in the barrens changed me, and I'm still not sure if I found a monster or it found me. It started with a tip from a grizzled bartender in Chatsworth, who overheard whispers of a thing prowling the back roads near Wharton State Forest. I figured it was just Jersey folklore. Tall tales about the Jersey Devil spun into something new, but the stories kept coming. Truckers spotting a hulking figure darting across Route 70, hikers finding strange tracks near Apple Pie Hill, and a stench like rotting leaves and wet fur that lingered in the air. I packed my camera, a notebook, and a healthy dose of skepticism, and headed south to see what was stirring up the Pineys. My first stop was a diner in Tabernacle, where I met Eddie Kowalski, a logger with hands like hams and a story that made my coffee go cold. I was hauling timber off Route 532, just past dusk, he told me, his voice low, eyes flicking to the window. Something stepped out of the pines, tall as a basketball hoop, covered in dark, shaggy hair. Its eyes glowed like headlights when my high beams hit him. Eddie said it crossed the road in 2 strides, silent except for a low grunt, and vanished into the swamp. Smelled like a landfill on a hot day, he added, shuddering. His buddy Lou nodded from the next stool, saying he'd heard it too, a deep, moaning howl that woke him in his trailer a mile away. I drove to Eddie's spot on Route 532, the road flanked by dense pines that seemed to swallow the sunlight. The sandy shoulder held faint tracks, big, maybe 16 inches long, with toes that looked almost human but too wide, too deep. I snapped photos, my pulse quickening, and sent them to Dr. Carla Moretti, a zoologist at Rutgers who'd been quietly studying the Barrens wildlife. Over a crackling phone call, she told me the prints didn't match any known animal. The stride's over 5 feet, she said. Whatever made these is heavy bipedal and not in any textbook I know. Carla met me the next day near Batstow Village, armed with plaster casts and a theory that made my head spin. The Pine Barrens are a perfect hideout, she said, pointing to a map of the million-acre wilderness. Swamps, rivers, old cranberry bogs, plenty of cover for something big and shy, maybe a relic primate. She showed me a cast from a 1980 sighting, nearly identical to the ones I'd found. Folks have been seeing this thing for decades, she said. The Lenape called it M'Tulin, the wild man of the woods. Mary Ann Phelps, a schoolteacher in Browns Mills, told me about a night she was driving home from bingo. It was near the Warren Grove Range, pitch black, she said, her hands trembling. Something big crossed in front of my car, upright, hairy, arms swinging like it owned the road. I slammed the brakes, and it just stared at me, eyes like burning coals before melting into the trees. Then there was Timmy Reese, a 15-year-old who'd been fishing at Oswego Lake when he heard heavy footsteps and saw a shadow taller than my dad, lurking in the cedars. I dropped my pole and ran, he admitted, still shaken. I had to see for myself, so I joined a nighttime search with a group of pineys near the Mullica River. There was Eddie, clutching a flashlight like a lifeline. Carla, with her recorder and a thermos of coffee. We trekked through swampy trails, the air thick with pine and the hum of mosquitoes. Joe pointed out snapped branches, 8 feet up, and a patch of matted grass that looked like something heavy had bedded down. "Here's where it sleeps," he whispered, holding up a strand of coarse black hair. The smell hit me, rancid like spoiled meat and swamp water. I gagged, stuffing the hair in a baggie for Carla. We pressed on, the forest growing darker, the silence heavier. Then it came, a sound that froze us in our tracks, a scream, raw and deep, like a man's voice twisted into something primal, echoing across the river. My flashlight shook as I scanned the trees, catching nothing but shadows. Eddie's face was pale, his knuckles white around his light. "That's it," he hissed. Carla's recorder whirred, capturing the wail as it faded into a low growl. At dawn, we found fresh tracks near the riverbank, deeper than the ones before, leading into a cedar swamp, too thick to follow. Carla cast them while I scribbled notes, my hands still shaky. Carla sent the hair to a lab, but the results came back inconclusive. Not bear, not human, just unknown. Last night I went back to Route 532 alone, parking where Eddie had his sighting. I sat on a stump, my flashlight dim, listening to the river's soft gurgle. Around 1 a.m., I heard it. A crunch, too heavy for a deer, followed by that smell, faint but unmistakable. I swung my light toward the trees, and for a heartbeat I saw it, a shape, tall and broad, slipping into the shadows. Its eyes caught the beam, glinting red, before it was gone. My heart pounded so hard I thought it burst. Was it Bigfoot? I can't swear to it. But I can't unsee those eyes either. The Pine Barrens are alive with something old, wild, and real. It's out there in the heart of Jersey watching from the pines, and I'll keep looking until I know the truth, or it finds me first.